dang shab su dem Devara sheba jidin jemba jivu duwe kalu yu Lada meba lada mena je tumba sanje chonde debe jewa shakya tuba Chaze lo chudu jazu je o tumba chonde debe shin sheba dracho Yanda bo zobe sanje reba na shazu demba devara sheba jidin jemba jivu duwe kalu yuba lana meba lada mena je tumba sanje chomde peje wa shakya tuba la chaze lo chudu jazu che wo tumba chomde de shi rajomba yanda Taba zobe sange reba dan shazu dembo devara sheba jidin jemba jivu duwe kalu yuba lana meba lada mena ge temba sange jomde pe jewa shak Jin de la gomba dumbo na le jidin de na choji zon de ze keba gyola cha Nanda gongwa chodu su san wa yi shi gya su se ge lumbo Kabo jidin su na lame wa gombo juni gyola cha Tenjo tenpa jime dawe cha Sendo trawa gyola cha Düdü düra siva suna chi nyame kenjin gyola cha Gobo tuji jedemba tamji kembe dömba bu Sona yuden gyaso jen dejin shela cha Tabe düja kevar gyur geve genzun ledru Chidu döndem çügür ba şigyur gyola cha Kone trove la yantun laba dala rabdunem Shingi dambo yudende gindun la yanjazem Tiba jiyam mejajin gewa pusum tobargi Rangi stemni yonsun dün dene sange tembayin Karma rabbi marmedan gyuma seba çuburdan Melan loban tinda bu düji çöna de darda Sona de tamci sibayi koban tone genge radı Kadan nadan çive lapşule Tibe sole rıva rıva şo To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, nor of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, the Tathagata which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death.
Baba kunju sumla cha zelo dige dage doba tuje na jamdende jebe ga chabo bombo kelonje gendu jembo dan janju sembe gendu jembo dan tabo chitu shudu de dondende somo na wa she jawe chuje na dage tengen zelo nyobar shudu ya te Anju semba semba jimbo baba jire ze wanju shira ge paru du jimba samo chiba nila nambara taji kumbu ngabo de da laya raji ge dombara namba tao dene sagi ge tu sedan demba sharibu Anju semba semba jimbo baba jire ze wanju la dege je meso riji pu kanla la shira ge paru du
jimba
Samo jeba jeba deba de jidar labar cha dege je meba dan janju samba samba haba jiri se onju gi sedan demba shari da de bola dege je meso shari bo rigi bo mo kan la la sharab je paru de chemba samo jeba jeba deba didar nambar tawa cha de Umbo ngabo de da la yang ra ji ge domba nambar Tao su tongpa, tongpa ni su su, tu le tongpa ni shen ma yin, tongpa ni le kya su shen ma yin. Te shen du tsuwa dan du shi dan, du ji dan, nambar sheba nang tongpa o. Shere bu te da chu tam je tongpa ni de tsini me ba, ma ye ba, ma ga ba, te ma me ba, te ma tam te Chiwa me ba, kawa me ba o, shere bu te da we na tongpa ni su me, tsuwa me, du shi me, du ji me, nambar sheba me, mi me, nawa me, na me, chi me, lu me, yi me, su me, tra me, ti me, ro me, re ja me, chu me do, mi je ka me ba ne, yi ge ka me, yi je nambar shebe kam ge ba do yang me do, ma re ba me, ma re ba se ba me, ga shi me, ga shi sebe ba do yang me do, te shin do do nge o, Uju wada ko badan la me yi shi me toba me ma to pa ya me to Shari bu de da we na chanju senpa na toba me be shir sherab ki paru Tenji ne de semla tripa me jing trapa me de chenje lo le shindu dene nyange le tebe tar chindu tuzundu nambar shube sanje tam shiraje paru du chimba la dene lana me ba yanda ba zobe chanju du nambar zoba san yeso avana shiraje paru du chimbe nga riba chimbe nga lana me be nga Nyamba da nyambe nga tunga tamje rabdu shivar chebe nga Mizu me na dembra sheba jade shera je paru du chebe nga Meba taya da kade kade para sang kade budi so Shari bu chanju samba samba jembo teda shera je paru
paru jumba
Samo la la
labar jawo dene
Jumde de tengen zen tele shede sanju samba samba jembo paba chile se wanchu la leso she jawa leso rigi pu de shindo de shinde chidara chuje tenpa sherab je paru du chimba samo la chebar jade de yin sheba jesu yirang jumde dege je ka tsene tsedan tenpa shari da de Anju semba semba jembo paba chile de wanchu da tamje dan dembe kore de da adam mida hama yida da jebe jigden yira de chomde deji sumba la ngomba te no.
Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Ratgriha Vulture's Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, "How should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, "O Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty, without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formations, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eyes, no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to, there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all Bodhisattvas hold of the wisdom gone beyond. And because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed Hayata. This is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family, it is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the whole gathering in the world with its gods, men, anti-gods, and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
사포보 전체적으로 스타트로 체인 준주서는 준주 자세 줘봐라 줘봐 줘봐라 줘봐서도 맞다 간다르지 가사 결바지다 아니 삼로 땅다 줘봐 그 줘봐 들리지래다 삼로 땅다 들리지 열다 세야겠다 들리지 냠내지다 지금 뜻이겠구나 해서
This Thursday evening now, and we resume the way of the Bodhisattva. It is the topic of our Thursday evening lecture, and in the way of the Bodhisattva, expressed in the title, is the nature of the text, being here, and here is the way that a private person, in their thought and in their approach, behave. And this becomes the subject of the lecture.
뭐야 만하도 지도 나라 이바이나야 아니 미기 삼로 땅다 콘주 삼로 땅다 근데 나도 삼로 땅다 들리다 콘주 쥐어봐 들리다 나도 쥐어봐 들리다 이제 먼저 주의식으로 하라 나도 배시디 아니 이제 받치 바이나 아니 디 샤르조 봐주고 쥐어봐 들리다 내가 좀 쥐어봐서 쥐어봐 들리다 나도 미기 쥐어봐 시기로 와 아니 그 삼로 땅다 쥐어봐 기다 간다 망부터 시기야요 어디나시 아 다당 알아줘야다 자주서 줘봐서 그래서 봤다 미치게 하다는데 미치게 말다 하다서 가사 게르지 다 삼로 땅당에 아니 줘봐 삼로 땅당다 줘배 남샤 시기 그래서
No different than the way in ordinary society we speak of their behavior, their manner of thinking, our behavior, our manner of thinking, and we say it that way, that they go about things that way and we go about things this way. Or we travel abroad and now we say the Eastern person does things this way and the Western person does things this way. We have these ways of describing behavior and how it differs between people. And in the very same way that then in the way of the Bodhisattva, we're speaking of a particular person, but not a person per se, a private individual, and how it is that they comport themselves, their behavior becomes the subject of our study.
Oh, yes, that's the Indian that make some of the Tandan to make Jobas and them to Halatanda, and a quick job by Yapore, the job to Jared. Oh, the midi job by Yapo Yore, midi job by Yabare. I want to use the city on Gurua, said that Pina is another just a Chanjus and Jobas, and it's Jobat de la Rigmambo, a chin. And it some of Tanda de la Randun, Susu de Chibu. 대화 두비하게 삼로다나 직 아니 직 신라 하게 대화 제 두야다 대화 두비하게 삼로다나 직 아니 직 대가야매 삼로다나 다릭 마무치 예베 나네 다 아니 삼로다나 약을 가래 또도 저거 약을 가래세 다 계제 니토도 아니 다 먼저 단다 준죽세야 되듯이 연구여래서
This person's approach is this way, this person's approach and behavior is that way. This person is the better sort of person, this person is the inferior sort of person. We evaluate people in this way, such that we can say, this person's behavior is consistently good in this way. This person's behavior is not. And ordinarily, this is the discerning distinction we can draw between the behavior among people. And there are among practices of Bodhisattvas many instances of the practices. But here, when we look at the survey of behaviors, there are those ordinary individuals who are primarily self-interested in all that they do, searching out personal satisfactions with no other consideration. And then there are others who take the view of the well-being of others such that they might find the means to bring others contentment. And then there are others who are not particularly focused in either direction, but among the survey of different behaviors, we find the basis for identifying what is best. And here it is the subject of the way of the Bodhisattva.
Oh, I think the Indian to some of the magic some of the passion somebody, and some of the to use music, Mangchaji, and then Suzuku that it said Dilla, Serengo, Nan as a Mayoya, and it's a Gange Mayoya, some of Chitola, and then some of Tan, and the Chitola Lagachi, that the Rimashuder. That in some logic, but is past simple muscle tar 통하이나 아니 치마 수수기 겨와 치마생이 삼로당 아니 겨와 치마생이 유나 아니 겨와 치마디다 간리지 고사래 삼로당 아니 당선다 겨와 치마들라양 아니 야고 용야 지양 하다 미기 부방 톱투야 유바 오 드리직 삼로 직단이 다 리니티죠 그래서
These are thought processes, approaches among individuals. And if we take any particular individual, for instance, we'll find that in all likelihood, they, like most others, will be preoccupied with this life alone, preoccupied with ensuring that they live long lives, that they are healthy, that they experience the least in difficulties possible, and then they map out their plans and work toward those ends accordingly. And this is the preoccupation of most. And then there are also others who take a slightly longer view, acknowledging subsequent lives, acknowledging that they exist. Then one would find a preferable situation in a subsequent life. And such an individual hopes to ensure that they find rebirth as heavenly beings or as human beings and make that achievable. So there are these two sorts of people.
다 이제 세상 다 뒤인데 다 치마 하다 메이 고마 토박 치도 아니 랑기다 삼로 땅 아니 저바 냠스 랑바 이나양 아니 다 되게 저 삼로 땅 저거를 왜서 대한 저거야 말다 간다 밀 류레바 이나다 하고 류레바 이나다 간다고 사제기 류레인데요 코알 깨대요 이제 좀 뭐 동해질 하시들 안 좋거네요 코알 코드 동해 코알 깨어 년가요 근데 이도 다 코알 타르바지 치고도 코알 마타르다 코알 그런 코알에 동해질 하시래서 다 코알에 타르바지 치고도 섬 그냥 섬로 배들이 같이 로지 따라 섬로 숨바도 자서 다 디네 다 서랑 동해를 타다양 다 되게 매바다 랑기 마기 쩨베 심제 시엔 탐제 동해기 날 때에는 팽기면 이제 랑 동해를 타르고 뭐 빼체네 시엔 동해를 타르고 여바다 타르주 여바다 되게 섬로 다운도 아니 다 섬로 다 숏 섬로 약쇼 되게 자기 열에 손을
Then one who, for rebirth as heavenly being or human being, undertakes the practice accordingly, is that practice then complete as it ought to be and could be? Whichever the case may be, whether they achieve heavenly rebirth as Deva or humanly rebirth as human being, they are, regardless, born again into samsara. The essential nature of samsara is painful. And so all over again, regardless, they go through the pain of samsara. Therefore, differently, there is the view to liberation from samsara, recognizing that the essential nature of samsara is painful. An individual who acknowledges this and aspires towards this then makes up a third new class of individual, don't they? Furthermore, the individual who first recognizes that samsara is essentially painful and aspires to liberation, then may extrapolate to all sentient beings, beginning with the acknowledgement that they themselves wish to avoid pain and to find liberation. Therefore, all mother sentient beings, too, no differently, wish to avoid pain and would then find liberation from pain. So then they, like I myself, must be liberated. This outlook becomes the very best outlook of all, the supreme outlook.
근데 인도 땅아도 배나 세디기 디기기 더 달라 먼저 삼로 땅 아니 냠내 제바이나 아니 다 되게 열어서 되게 다 지단 지촉으로 와 세디기 더 달라 수술한 기부 용해야다 땅라 빅내 나서 마요 강내 마요하게 삼로 땅 쪽으로 말하면 접촉으로 이내야 이 subject degree was 되게 여바데 더다 하장 충분하다 가지고 밀루 이게 좀 바지다 가지고 남직이 실업지로 전에 파버리 체벌도 파버지로 되게 다 배주다 되게 배주 땅 두고 여말에 르된 자친부터 배주 땅 모두 오늘 잘 재산도 하장 세대기 디기를 섬는 땅에 있는 하장 거봐 충분하어서 세대기 디기라는 하장 춘주지 춘주 어디를 차대어서 그래서 밀루키는 세대기 더다더나 아니 그거 하장 춘주 차가를 해서
An individual who is preoccupied in their thought and in their activities with finding satisfaction in this life, while such an approach is permissible, it is certainly allowed any person to pursue their health and the avoidance of hardship and to make this their concerted effort in a lifetime. One might pray to this end and practice to this end, all of which is allowed, but it is nevertheless much too limited. A human being is endowed with a native intelligence. It is an exceptional endowment, and were it only to be used in this way, it would be underutilized, it would be wasted. In a lifetime, to pursue only personal satisfaction is too limited, too small a purpose. Its duration is much too short. It is overall much too limited, for it is a human endowment with its great native intelligence, and it should be suited to a purpose accordingly.
Oh, yeah. Anybody, Chima, Sechima, Samlotan, Sechima, the Rutoviak, Samlotan, Joba Yamne Cheba Inayang, Yang, Goba Chuntaures, Sima, Mida, Hada, Mig, Goba Toba Samdi, Yamne Cheba Inayang, and in Azuta, Azang, Goba Chunju Chavare, Hada, Mid, Hada, Mig, Goba Tomna Yang, Dunge Meba Chayomar, the Awachas on Tobiomar, Goba Chuntares.
Even preoccupation with ensuring fortunate rebirth as heavenly deva or human being and practicing accordingly is too limited an approach as well. Should one practice with this end in mind, it is a very limited, narrow end in mind, for nevertheless, should one be born a deva or a human being, it isn't as though one has found liberation from pain or even found the very greatest in contentment.
Oh, yeah. Somebody, that's Susu Koala, Tarbache, Tarbatoba, Samatanga, Yinayang, and Yamle Dings Chagres, Yamle Dings, and the Susu Dunge Sewa down, and if they were Toba some the Chumare. In a Tezamji, and that there was Chasama Tobio, there was Chasama Yan Tobio Mare. Rangita, Tamji, Changtu, your Mare, Chazan Timedi. That Tezamji Samatama Yinayang, and Goba Chazan to be your Mares.
And that third class of person who strives for liberation from pain of samsara, practices accordingly, they have reached something like a middle mark to the purpose that they could set for themselves, for there is some reduction in pain and the finding of contentment. Nevertheless, is all that is best in well-being and contentment found for them? It is not. Nor have they removed all of their personal shortcomings, yet others remain. By this measure, then, they have neither have they fulfilled their purpose.
Oh, yeah, that's the Indizamata, some look and this down with that Jews. Jobala Juba, so the Jobas, that Jobas, and Joba the country's Jubu, such a Jews and Mingdi to shit liberal. That Joba short Juba, that Chanju Semba sing it. That Chanju Sembe Joba, Sizamata, Joba, not the Joba, Sansho, Joba Cho to Juba, all this share, Chandala, that Junjuk said, because the Tosam goes to Chigua, Junzin, the Chava,
Then what would one's approach be? The approach is presented in the way of the Bodhisattva. The way of Bodhisattvas and how one begins their study of it, outlined here, conveyed in the very title of the text. Conveyed there is that of all behaviors, of all activities, the best form that they take, the supreme form that any activity takes, is that exemplified in the Bodhisattva. Thus, it is our topic of study as we listen and contemplate and cultivate the mind of awakening.
Oh, yes, that's a new thing, the Jobas, that okay, Chanju Sim, Gula Union, and the Sim Jenta, me, to look Mango Yorwa, or that Chanju Sim Gula Unigi, that's Sim Jin, Karina Dizuki, and it Jobat, this Yams language, that, the two did, and that means that resolution.
The title points to the activities of those who have developed bodhicitta, the awakened mind, be they human beings, heavenly beings, animals, whosoever they are, who have developed the mind of awakening bodhicitta, who they are and what they do, how they instantiate that awakening mind. This is indicated by the title.
근데 이제 봐봐. 장주기 셈 장주기 셈 귤의 유니에기 아니 미티기 미빼 메라 차잖아다. 아주 셈제 가리나 여다지나 돈도 여러 이다 여러 다 여러 미 여러 전화 예 초거래. 이내다 다른 미도지를 쳐보시나 장주기 셈 귤의 유니 미티기 아니 줘봐 간디치레스 그 삼로 간디스탄그레 거기 냠내 간디치그레스 오다 디 저디시 아니 디 렌들다 디 주주나 냠내 되게 요구여래서
Those whose minds are awakened, who have developed bodhicitta, those persons will take a human being as mere example, though they may be any being. They may be preta, animal, deva, human being. We take the human being as an instance of the Bodhisattva and examine it and ask, what is it that they do? How is it that they think? What is it that they are doing? These are the questions we ask, and the response, the answers, are supplied by the way of the Bodhisattva, the text.
다 되게 삼로 칼리스탄 그래 스두삼바다 투아들려와 삼로 코 삼주센 빌레 유니 미디기 아니 코 삼로 삼바카 삼로 칼리스탄 그래 코 냠내 칼리치 그래 좋아지 대상이 다 코그 가르치 그랬으나 아니 미과 코그 삼로 땅사 미 삼게 삼로 미과 가리려 미 그랬으나 창주를 미 그래 창주 스두삼바다 대화가 나네 대화 초도 주바 딜레 하베 대화 매바 대화 초도 주바 톱잡에 타르투바 아니 장주성의 제 델라 믹다 델라 믹데 아니 톰도 둠바치 둠바 오야 다 둠바델라 아니 다 거기 톰도 장주 델라야 장주 델라 니용을 장주 뒤에다 신대 뒤에 장주 들어왔다 얘가 저거 장주 델라 랑기 톱자 장주다 신기 톱자 장주 니요래 소리다
The person who has developed the awakened mind, what is that person's thought? How is it that they put it to practice? To answer that, their objective, their object, and purpose is enlightenment. Enlightenment which is unsurpassed. Enlightenment that is the ultimate among all accomplishments. This is their object. Then they aspire to the achievement of it. The aspiration itself to enlightenment is of two kinds. Enlightenment that is one's own personal welfare. Enlightenment that is the very welfare of all others.
내가 톱대 장주니부티 안에 한게 셴바세네 디 톰도 눈바니 눈바니 될 민칼러나 란된 되니게 두바스틱세 제가서 란된 되니게 두바스틱세 셰데 되니게 두바스 두바니 요래서
These then are two forms to the aspiration to enlightenment. They are given two names. The first, aspiration to enlightenment, that is the personal welfare, and aspiration to enlightenment, that is the well-being of all others. These two.
어이, 많이 미유 장주니세. 아니 더 장주니디 통도 많이세. 어이, 많이 심중래. 통도기 뭐게 장주를 미니 뭐게 다니디 셈스. 소 셈다 심중니. 또 디여바데 지하고 그래서 뭐.
지한접식 성한데서 받자마서 다니 토전니 듬바니 데니 소심단 심중니
소소님마다 이 따디게 듬바니디도아 이 심중니 항상
심중니 심중니 만자완니
심중미다니래 장주 듬바다 신데 듬바 심중미다 니세 딱 코념돌라 듬바니라 냠돌라 강라 그리고 또 소심지어와 오야 소심디 나 장주 셈세 항상 장주 셈디라 로바치 듬바니부터 그 로바 숨나가디
These two distinct aspirations are two distinct mental factors. And they both assist the primary consciousness, the main mind, that is the awakening mind, Bodhisattva. Therefore, there are mental factors and main minds. These two distinct forms of aspiration assist the main mind, Bodhisattva.
어이, 다 인도에 봐, 다 인도에 장주 셈 미유 장주라 미네 톰도 두번이 다 냠도 요요 셈저와 어디 셈을 줄여 이들 속에 다 냠내 간데 지그래서 거기 냠내 제가 냠내디 다 냠내 배 약속 초도 줘봐 장주 셈배 줘봐 셈배 장주 셈배 삼로 당다 장주 셈배 줘봐 장주 셈배 냠내 어이 다디 아니 다 냠내 초 냠내는 약속 줘봐 약속 어디 뭐 모두 제가 지도라 준주 딱 이용가 해서
And where the object is enlightenment and aspiration of these two forms has arisen, the two forms of aspiration furthering the principal mind of Bodhisattva, where these primary consciousness and derivative mental factors of the two forms of aspiration are present in the mind of an individual. This is the very individual whose practice, approach, their thought make up our subject. These are the activities, practices, that among all practices and all activities are best of all, which are supreme. These are described in the way of the Bodhisattva.
Oh yeah, tadi 되게 좁아 상부티 안에 다 냠내 치원도 삼바다 냠내 치원도 안에 다 가장 삼로디 가려서 장주 톰도 사바들와 장주 톰도 좀바다 삼바디 장주 셈랑 줄에 겐도 삼바디 아니 다사 베스 미율샤 아니 디치도라 아니 치루고 냠내 치고야 아니 디네 바진 좁라기 좁아 고송비 좁아도 상로다 오 딘주 강갈로다 아니 자 산지지 고반 토백이 귤을 주고도나 아니 장주선 배줘봤어 다 산지지 고반 토백이 귤을 주고 민도나 아니 다 장주선 배줘봤어 근데 자기 요 말해서
These supreme activities, these unparalleled practices, the activities of those who have set for themselves the objective of enlightenment, who aspire to enlightenment, for whom purpose is enlightenment. All they do to this end in the six paramitas and in developing the purest conduct of body, speech, and mind, and for whom these activities do become cause for their achievement of enlightenment, then these activities are the very ways of Bodhisattvas. When it is the case that an activity is not cause for enlightenment, then these are not the ways of Bodhisattvas.
어이 나 지난 나 장주 선배기 줘봐 장주 선배기 장주 그쌤 귤을 깨다 장주 그쌤 귤을 깨네 아니 줘봐 라바 되게 되 장이 냠내 제바 이나 아니 다진 것도 강라 시야겠다 라니 타바 토바 뒷판에 고알에 타라야게 타바 토베야 탑체다 아니 지마 덴로 토베야다 아니 세딜에 이게 그래도 그나 강가 차단냠도 용토 그래 다진 삼로 되게 된 걸로 수수 냠내 치대바 이나 아니 제마 되게 냠내 되게 용구 말아 왔어다 가지고 정주 선배 쪄발라 냠내 야고 치투와 이나 아니 세디기 디기다 세딜라 가르고 유배다 치마 덴로 토베야다 아니 코알을 들어가가 용토를 제가 인디 곧 줘봐나 줘봐 초도 줘봐 세고야지 줘봐 띠냠서 라발에 때니 제부 이도 제부배 대와 친친지 추숨 강가랑 토부이와 인디 아니 줘봐 초도 줘봐 자기 열해서 뭐지
When an awakening mind, Bodhicitta, arises in an individual, and then with its arising, then practices of that individual instantiate it, then, as I've described, all that is good, liberation from samsara, all that is good that includes as well good fortune of rebirth as heavenly deva and as human being, whatever the form well-being takes, when the practices of the Bodhisattva are instantiated, then these come about naturally. When the activity is consistent with the way of Bodhisattvas, then all good in this lifetime will come to pass. And so too will any other form that goodness takes, the fortune of rebirth as heavenly deva, as human being, and liberation from samsara. For this reason, then, that all good stems from it, the way of Bodhisattvas is known to be supreme.
나 근데 인도 다 장주고 셈고 줘봐 장주 셈배 줘봐도 냠도 랑벌 제발라 나 냠도 랑 투야게 차제 망보시 고고요 차제 망보 나 차제 뒤 예배는 차제 개체와 직 가려웠어 아유 때 맞아 개좀 보시라 그래서 당도 준주고 끼를 르시바나 셰대 아유 그 르세디 아니 나 장주 셈배 줘봐도 랑이 송 투야다 장주 선배 줘봐도 야 공도 패야 들려 차지나 바유 때뭐 진지비지 고고요 바유 때뭐 맨날 아니 장주 선배 줘봐 송마도 야기 강에 여봐 인도 아니 다 저거 숭야가 된다라 아니 봐요 아니 다 봐요 생이들아 당못 튀어봤지 싸고 고면거네 다 냠수나 봐도 그거 요래서 보지
The activities emerging from the awakened mind in order to put into practice such activities, there must be beforehand considerable support supporting such activities. Critical among forms of support to the way of Bodhisattvas is conscientiousness. Right in the middle of the present text, in the 4th chapter, for the preservation, the heightening and intensification of these, the ways of Bodhisattva, one depends upon their conscientiousness. Where conscientiousness is lacking, the way of Bodhisattvas cannot be preserved. To preserve the way of Bodhisattvas, one relies upon their conscientiousness. So then the study of conscientiousness and contemplation of it and cultivation of it.
뭐이 다 바이오된 사기 거된 거랬으나 다 바이오된 사기 유료데 당고랑게 냠슬라야 랍자게 창주선배 랍자 창주선배 라발라 라발라 삼로타네 아니 바이오 순고야 직세 아니 랑게 단다가 랑조 그 뒤뒤 제벌세 밀루톱 미추라도 남제기 싫어보다 댐바 루데 밀루 샘데 추라도 남조기 싫어보 여봐 인데기 뒤뒤 딜라 삼네 바이오 제고고 여봐 아니 랑조 께 니몰 삼로타네 니모기 께라 삼로타네 아니 바이오 순고고 여봐 오 되게 진짜 숨지고네 아니 바이오 때뭐 바이오 진짜 순고요 해서
Where is conscientiousness applied? Conscientiousness is applied in considerations of the trainings in the practices of Bodhisattvas. Conscientiousness is applied in view of the present moment of birth as human being with the human being's biological endowment of a native intelligence. Thus, the physical basis is a human body. The mental basis is the native intelligence for discriminating wisdom. The present moment is the moment of opportunity wherein both are present. In view of this, then conscientiousness is employed. And in recognition of the perils of afflicted minds, conscientiousness is employed.
Oh yeah, that's indeed. 당연하도 바이오 때문에 다 근데 부절했다네 바이오 때문에 시에서 아니 때 개발했을 때는 바이오 때문에 거버때 모두 시에서 다 단다 니무 끼어나 쌈네 아니 바이오 때문에 거버 시에가 된다라는 것도 니무들이 단다 뭐 주치기 요래서
These then are the 3 reasons presented for being conscientious. Conscientiousness in view of the trainings that are to be achieved. Conscientiousness in view of the human biological endowment. And conscientiousness in view of the perils of mental afflictions. And we now are concerned with this, the 3rd, conscientiousness as it would be employed in view of the perils of afflicted minds.
오야 세상 다 정보 거기 니모고捐了 니모고捐 통화 제발라 정보 니모도 뭐 쳐고 니모도 뭐 맞아도 니모고捐 것도 지도고 말와 제가 니모도捐거 쳐봐 제발라 정보 니모도 랑게 야고 좀 뭐시 봐 어디 뭐시 봐 영화가 지더라 내가 또 다다 자녀다 니녀다 그래서这些 제대로 그래서 해서
The perils of the klesha, mental afflictions, must be indicated and identified in order to ever be recognized as perils. So the indication for the purpose of identifying mental afflictions, an indication of 6 root mental afflictions and 20 secondary mental afflictions.
뭐야 제가 다 나도 개침부터 가르스는 난게 쌤이 뉴모디 봐 되어지 치마도나 아니 치기 자기 내봐 거뒤에 뒤두고 말해 난게 쌤이 뉴모디 되어이나 아니 치기 자가 뒤두고 어디다 냐면 지키 송고요 레송스
So important to us is the fact that until the inward afflicted minds are finally defeated, until that point, we will always be defeated by our external adversaries. But when the internal afflicted minds are defeated, then all external adversity is defeated.
뭐야 이 직접 위로 같이 저다 조직이 되어라 난게 쌤니 되줄나 그래서 난게 쌤니 되줄나 아니 치 자디 뇌미뉴스 치 자기 뇌미뉴스 직접 조직 소리
And I don't know whether this verse recalled from memory will go just as intended, but it is the very word of Atisha that when the inner mind is finally pacified, then all force of any external foe has been eliminated.
치스 이랑 치기 요들 말하지 다디 오마 생기 좋은다 다랑게 쌤디 요나스로와 요아스 바스 쌤 칠로 처음에 쌤 두고마도 마마시와 제바 나스고 랑게 쌤디 요아나 아니 치 다디 겐체네 치 다디 겐체네 아니 랑게 쌤이 쌤디 색버 치그레스
양nhập wrong nong dim yona
요 생각하고 마시와지
마시부치 요 tempo mai ba
tempo me 바치나 때나 아니 치기 자되게 괜찮네
그래
그 수르스는 마두면은 치타도 저거 냠도 디랑이 셈 마두디 규체 아니 치기 자되게 괜찮네 아니 랑이 셈디 셈 따다메 베 메기 시보다 집에 대화는 시작을 해서 일리나 아니 랑이 셈 당고 랑이 셈디 두 대나 랑이 셈디 좀 사무스 수르 셈디 맞좀 그래서 아니 좀 전에 치타 좀 도구를 같이 도구를 해서 어디요 조직 순서로
And the second 2 lines spoken by Atisha are, while the inner mind is yet unsteady, always meeting external adversity, it will be upset and scorched and turned to ash. So it is then that, so long as the inner mind isn't yet pacified, it is unable to confront external adversity, but with the pacification of the internal mind, then the meeting with any external adversary.
그래서 어야 다들 이제 잡았다 당원 랑게 셈게 나게 다듀세디 랑게 셈게 다데 유모 당원들다 단다 nimu de la kazang de zhe jia de ge zai nimu chu zai nimu chu na tang wo de ja ene kong zhou ene ngai ge ene ma ri ba ene tie sum ene dawas ozo nimu chu zai nimu chu 아 니모 대단 니모 되게 냠돌아 니모 되게 대다 타 니오기 니모 아니 니 숙생 딱 다가 제가 요래서
One's own internal mind, like a foe, would be pacified. That internal mind that is likened to the foe are afflicted minds, the klesha that are 6 root mental afflictions of desirous attachment, aversion, pride, ignorance, doubt, and view. These 6 root mental afflictions. And along with those, near to these, are an additional 20 secondary mental afflictions.
뭐야 니 가장 어쩌듯이 시제도 잡아 다와 될라양 다와 나로 나 다들 어쩌 다와 직장으로 와 하얀 장가 잡단 그 다와도 야고 원시야 제대로 다와도 나로라야 아니 직다 다르다 로가 지금 뜻이 저지 아니 이거는 다와가 지게요 다와 쇼지 수준 저지 스마트 제어 로가스 이스람 다와들 봐 대신 다와들 대신 야지를 다와가 쓰냐 로스트 지게 봐 어디서
In the presentation of the 6 root afflictions, the 6th view is again further divided into 5 forms. View takes extreme view, the view of the transitory collection, extreme view, view taking a faulty set of practices as supreme, view that takes a faulty moral conduct as supreme.
지기다 다르다 로다 지기다 다르다지 지기다지 다르다지 아니 다와 존재 주름 두주 존재 로다스
And distorted view.
다와 지다 두시네요 그래서 수수가 제시자 다 하실라 자와 툭스 가시들은 다와가 다미가 쭉 타가자들이 요 배제 수수로 타가자다 모두 지나면서 예소로스
These the further division of view into 5 views and other presentations reflect a diversity in presentations that are given of 6 root mental afflictions. In some cases, these are called 6 root mental afflictions. In others, they are described as 5 mental afflictions that are non-view and 5 afflicted views. There's variety in presentation of these 6 root afflictions.
다와가 다미가다 이 산이한 뭐가 류샤마도래这些 내용 그렇다 내가 다 드린 것도 니에 니문이 슈 어디지 맞지这些 두 인소
5 afflictions that are not view and 5 afflicted views and related presentations we will leave aside for now, as they will come up as a matter of course in later chapters. Now we will turn our attention to the 20 secondary mental afflictions.
예, 단 예외 인신 써야 된다. 이제 장가돼. 나 장가 잡셔. 초와 군지 차바 칙바 차도 세나 유 야바 남세 모자메바 체메바 아니 무바 고바 마테바 레로 밤에 쟁이 시시 마이바 넘버 1와 대 심중 남소 산주다 장가제 비지소
The 20 secondary mental afflictions include rage, resentment, concealment, spite, jealousy, avarice, pretense, guile, arrogance, violence, shamelessness, non-embarrassment, dullness, excitation, faithlessness, laziness, heedlessness, forgetfulness, lack of meta-awareness, and distraction.
早就摸起了吧，你能早吃些，早就摸。那早落了10年呢，你早的地方叫成这个，我长个落了年地方用去都是早的对吧？초와 군지 차다서 치과 차도 세나다 여다 유다 남세면 체면묘고 고바다 마테 레로 밤에 당 쟁에 때나 신이다 남이다는 이주 그냥 주주 장가들 rol을 예 지도를 되게 저 돔스교르도 나 소리 장데 또 식교를 생기나 rol을 예를 편도 치고 열에서.
And here, this is followed by a root verse. Maybe I won't recite the root verse. However, knowing the root verse is beneficial for recalling which are the 20 secondary afflictions. So then the verse is, the 20 secondary ones are thus: rage, resentment, concealment, spite, jealousy, avarice, pretense, guile, arrogance, violence, shamelessness, non-embarrassment, dullness, excitation, faithlessness, laziness, heedlessness, forgetfulness, lack of meta-awareness, and distraction, making 20. So should you memorize the verse, then it assists you in recalling the 20 secondary afflictions.
Oh yeah, that is so that's a 장가디 모시야 지도로 도움도 쓰여버 that is it. That never 딱 한달 콜라 녀외 니모스라고 그러 녀외 니모스에서 맞다 자외기 니모들라 니모들이 차시나 여봐 아니 자외기 니모라 중화라 녀와 체기 니모인자 녀외 니모스 명 딱이 그래서
They are known as 20 secondary mental afflictions, and for those who would know their number and which they are, then this verse assists in recalling them. They are described as 20 secondary mental afflictions, secondary indicating that they are divisions of offshoots of 6 root afflictions.
Oh yeah, 다 당모디 가르치네. 초와 세대다 초와 세대 직세 초와 세대다 가요스나 콘로그 콘스토더 콘로그 차도 콘로그 데제나는 콘스토바체 아니 콘스토 신세 아니 군에 나르셈베 시구부 가runla 녀외 아니 너버 체베스 너버 체드베 심중시라 아니 초와스 명다고다.
The first secondary mental affliction is rage. This is a mental factor associated with anger. It falls within the larger category of anger. It is a mental factor associated with anger, that is the wish to inflict harm when any of the 9 basic causes of hostility are present.
나 지금 뭐 그 가진 주 장가는 요 가진 다 랑라 네버 체 네버 랑라 삼로단 숨 아니 랑기 녀라 삼로단 숨 랑기 달라 삼로단 숨 시공부 구수와 어제 시공부 구도 어디다 잡고 걸고 해서
They are associated with the 9 basic causes of hostility. The 9 basic causes of hostility I indicated last week. They are the three basic causes of hostility connected to oneself. The 3 basic causes of hostility connected to one's friends. The three basic causes of hostility connected to one's foes.
야, 다들 다들 쿵도도 다들 좋아도 이 망아주 보조시도 쿵도 거타서 아주 뭐kundi스 아와 토메가 소래 뭐kundi레스 초아선데 가래스나 너버체베 주의 녀월내나 콘도 차르도바 셈지 꾸네 나르셈바 데스 아니 천재 렘바 체베 쮸발로 소바다 너발로 쇼베 땡체베 레젠스 어디다 공도사데 로면 바바 토메게 송로 공도가 해서
Where do we find scriptural support for this definition of rage? We find it indicated by the scriptures composed by Arya Sangha in the Compendium of Knowledge, which says, what is rage? It is an attitude that is hostile when a cause of ill will is present, since it is a mind that is associated with anger. It functions as a basis for taking up weapons, punishing, and so on, and preparing to harm. This the scriptural support lent by the Compendium of Knowledge composed by Arya Asanga.
오였다 어디 단다 초와의 콘도고 철도고 있으라도자마다 초와의 콘도 이부디 아니 지버지양 레스 저다나 하는 군이다 지버레 제벌 요레스 저다도 안에 군이가 다 제벌 요바 시야가 된다라 아니 다 콘도도 초와의 유인여월 되지도 되다 보이나도 뭐야 콘도 니스 그 유인여월 미네 장스 그 유인여월 미네 장스 셈라 샤워 점지 미수바 콘도 투버 체베 내가 따오지라 아니 콘도스 이라서 다 콘도 다 초와서 가르스나 때 개벌 가르스나 초와디 신여월 내바나 콘트로 콘트로 첼페데서 류지 대발로 소베 류지 대발로 소바 차데발라 마르굴루바 나사 매체 바르와타 타보실라 초와스 다다 서비스하서
Rage is a mental factor associated with anger. So is it identical with anger? To differentiate between the two, as it is not identical with anger, we go on to describe how it is. Anger is a disturbance within the depths of the heart that is intolerant of the object of anger, even when the object merely appears in the mind without being actually present. It is like igniting a fire. While rage is an amplification of anger, involving wanting to physically beat and so on, when a basic cause of rage is present. It is like a fire when butter is poured onto it, blazing with tongues of flames.
초와스 딱 이제 초와스게디 네버 드밤 나르셈베 나르셈바다 토하스네. 네. 세우쳐서 뇌버 제버 뇌버 열어. 뇌버 제버 뇌버 나르셈바. 나르셈바 저 어디다 심주 토하스 차게 해서.
Where there is desire to harm and maliciousness, it is rage associated with anger.
다들 니버들다 당보다 토하스는 저를 다 토하스는 모두 샘나를 그 프로세스를 야나니야 제바체 제를 섬었다고 마고타도 제바 마고 제 요래서 다 니버들 군지스 나 콩도 잘 도싱스 지버제 이 콩도 잘 도싱 늘레 제되바 늘레 제되바 메동에 semjus. 그래서 메동에 semjuj라 군지스.
This description then of rage, just a rough outline of it. Further examination of it will follow. Then we move to the secondary mental affliction, resentment. Resentment is a mental factor associated with anger. Like rage, it is associated with anger. It does not let go of the wish to respond with harm. Since it firmly holds a continuous grudge, it is called resentment, or literally holding a grudge.
오야 다콜로 큰진세 큰지면서 관다지 랑게 파게 셈나라 마가와야 네베 somebody 균 담도 짐바 제베나 큰진세 큰베 균 담도 짐베나 큰진세 콜로 큰지라고 균진 그제 그랑 젤레로도 어디래서
It firmly holds a grudge continuously. This is why it is known literally as holding a grudge. This is resentment.
오야 다디 콩두사기 뭐 군두 란자르샤 뭐 군두래 군두 짐바 간시나사 디워도 콩초에 철도가 니지 셔르니에 삼바 미동아 때에서 미수베 때 제벨레 제노 소데다 구두 풍다 데레죠.
And again, the scriptural support is provided by the compendium of knowledge. What is resentment? Associated with anger and following in its wake, it does not let go of an intention to retaliate. It functions as a basis for intolerance. That is the scriptural support from the compendium of knowledge.
Oh yeah, just a knowledge. knowledge paget susul megi su ta magawa chewa dan de susul nyoba cheshe na ta knowledge chendu lo de pa tang go ma dang wa che ni be kon mu tu de zimba ida kunzi ta ko development de so.
When one has been harmed, then what one ought to do is relinquish any impulse to retaliate, but resentment precisely refuses to relinquish the impulse to retaliate. So it is resentment.
Oh yeah, that creative was it. That kunzi said the word triple because that kunzi that in a super chapas. Chapas in that super chapas. That chapas in the Kari Kondor, that in the Kondo Kondo, but that chabadi Sanyu Nani Timuk Charpa, Sanyu Deja Shetan Kondo Deja Shetan 아니 티무르 콘스토바 숨바 티무르 차르토시 티무르 콘스토바 제 티무르 차르토시 시엔지 페버 데베 삼베사 녜발링와나 카나마토와 큐바테 베버 데베 심중체라다 차바스 그래 어디래다.
The third secondary mental affliction is concealment. This is a mental factor associated with delusion, ignorance. While the first two, rage and resentment, were associated with anger, here, the third, is associated with delusion. Among the 6 root afflictions of desirous attachment, aversion, ignorance, or delusion, here we have concealment associated with delusion. It wants to hide one's misdeeds or keep them secret when others mention them out of a wish to help. It has the function of directly causing regret and indirectly causing unhappiness or a wretched state.
야, 다 제자스타스 심중 차바디기 딱 제레 고글 교연도 제레로 가레스나 아니 제레는 무엇이 무엇이 교바당 규네 르셈 데왈라 레버 미네밤 미데버 제베 레제 지글라 콜 제레다 차바디기 제레데 이바데 뭐버 구두 공간다 공 독사데 공부 구두 공도도 집버다다 나 말씀 좀 망제다 뭐버 구두도 소장하러 와 제가 차바 간시나 레버쿠와 티무기 차토바 카나마토바 큐바 데스 교바다 레벌라 미네베 데베 레제노 소다 공데세 염도레소.
It has the function of directly causing regret and indirectly causing unhappiness or a wretched state. The scriptural support is again found in the Compendium of Knowledge, as is scriptural support for most of these secondary mental afflictions. The Compendium of Knowledge says, what is concealment? Associated with delusion, it keeps secret one's misdeeds when one is rightly confronted. It functions as a basis for regret and a wretched state.
그래서 야, 딱 한다라 수수그 카나 마토베기 아니 카나 마토발라 수 카나 마토바디 아상고로 마상디 베베이나 아니 차바스로 왔다.
Natural misdeeds would be acknowledged, but when confronted with one's natural misdeeds or misdeeds by nature, one instead conceals them, and this is concealment.
카나 마토바라 가서 가진 것만 이게도 카나 마토바들라 제베 카나 마토바다 라시 카나 마토바스 디바들 니었다. 제베 디바다 라시 디바스 니어 디지요.
As has been explained, misdeeds are of 2 kinds: misdeeds by nature and misdeeds by proscription. 2 forms that misdeeds can take and indicated here.
제베 카나 마토바스도 나라서 켈레바 pendant tomato 켈레 자주고 셈 켈레 산에 아니라 제주 셈 너무 마소나 제베 카나 마토바 여러 아니 랑게 바게 라신 카나 마토바데 땅 류지 보내 비버사바 가지고 비버사바라 비주가가 딱 라신이 카나 마토바 차그래서 손었어.
Misdeeds by prescription involve formal commitments, such as the commitment to uphold Bodhisattva vows, for instance, and when they are not upheld, then this is a violation of the prescription that goes along with the formal vow, and this would be a misdeed by prescription. And misdeeds by nature involve any of those natural misdeeds that come about physically, verbally, mentally.
야, 나디네 시바도 시바스 시바. 나 시바스게디 가레스나 시바스게디 신지 랑게 녀발링원나스. 미 바로 보고 랑게 녀발링원나. 녀발의 교바다 샤바 삼바 메버 초와당 군진지 왕기 xie samba cik zubu maor debe simjung jila cikpas.
This is followed by the fourth secondary mental affliction, spite. This is a mental factor that has no intention of regretting and confessing one's own faults when they are mentioned by others, but with animosity empowered by rage and resentment, wants to utter harsh words.
그래서 야, 딱 한다. 되게 젤레데, 딱 찍고 젤레데 가르스나. 찍주부소 저 많이 뭐 두만 주버 제베 동해 제버 제바. 그 내가 젤레데에 손.
It functions to generate misery by doing many unsuitable things, such as uttering harsh words.
어떻게 이미 콩디 군디 단다 찍데 맞잖아 장자서 하나 어디. 찍고 가시나 콘도다 차도베 코 토도 콘도 제모 온도 주베스. 셈지 군의 날셈바 때 찍주부 링시 잡고된 제바 레제노 손은 마인베 손은 마인바 페웨 레제 레버 미니베 레제노 소디스.
And again, from the Compendium of Knowledge, which says, what is spite associated with anger? It is a thoroughly hostile attitude that is preceded by a mind of anger and resentment. It functions as a basis of wrath, as well as harsh, insulting words, and to increase demerit and a state of wretchedness.
그 랑기 칸들 그 주녀바 인자 남자 틀은 늘레 아 남자 카두고도 제바 인자 그 찍바스.
One is harmed, immediately they have the impulse to retaliate, and in this mood they are spiteful.
너희 어디 보러 찾아만 길지 샤냐 this also 저버스나 아니 this 야에서 삼체게 도시.
Then we can wrap up there, and if we debate now a bit, perhaps that might be most constructive. So if you've got any misgivings, let's hear them, and then we can work to clarify whatever causes some uncertainty.
Curious about concealment and how that plays itself out in a sort of collective or in a relationship.
Ini chap kor ani di minigi and delam ki thola ani chapati kandres jung yodamegi kor tiwa detsamyin
차바세다 간다 먼저
rani
다른 가서 이 지난 팀 뉴스백이 라바 냠슬라야기 달라 당가서 수수기 예바추나 예바디 상고치 밀어봐 예바추하게 켈네 아니 알아 밀어봐도 시작도 거와 이게 시작으로 에 민니기 바로 잡아서 그 그런 지조 도당에 지당지 여러 와도 그 이때 개발지 해서
concealment related to practicing the trainings consistent with the Bodhisattva vows are principally meant here in this discussion of concealment, that is related to commitments to training in Bodhisattva vows, training with Bodhisattva vows. These mistakes of mine have occurred. One exposes their own shortcomings and accounts for them, thereby avoiding concealment. Between any two individuals in an ordinary worldly scenario, the meaning of concealment would differ from this, the principal meaning intended.
주선배 또 먹게는데 좀마다 저 랑기 녀바 차고도 배배 깨지 시기가 말아 다 잠주 신기 되는 지야라 랑기 신라 해봐 맞제봐 신라 내봐 중소나 아니 내배기 다 자주선배기 자동도 주에 녀바 용도이도 꼭 랑기 남사 디 너로와도 켈레 나는 켈레인데 아니 디바 샤고 지야지도 상계다 자주선배고도 파 상고체도 샤고 치투야지 어쨌든 이 제바이나 아니 다시 가나 마도보다 집에 가나 마도보 예바디 용마르와 디치돌라디 지금 디시게 요래서
where there is framework provided by formal Bodhisattva vows, wherein one can be responsible for a certain downfall, violation of the Bodhisattva vows, namely, where there is the formal commitment to serving the welfare of others, where one has instead harmed another, as it is a root downfall, then one acknowledges responsibility for this and confesses to it before the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as witnesses, mending and purifying. This addresses then two forms of misdeed involved, misdeed by nature and misdeed by prescription within the framework of the Bodhisattva vows. And this is principally the meaning related to concealment.
미니가 벌써 뜻이랑 아주 뒤 용다도 찍어서도 미니가 버르고 찍고 그런 게 냐면 단단한 거 자주선 잘 냐면 시단 셰버와 나 뒤 찍어서야 돼다 간다를 수족이 미니 깨져 장보시 깨져랑 게 깨져 상부 마셔 깨져 셰고 좀 마셔보지 배샤워이나 아니 차봐서 그 차기를 해서 깨져 수족을 깨져 미 파종을 내배 깨져도 아니 밀바게 깨져랑 게 상부 마셔봐랑 게 깨져 셰고 좀 마셔봐 배샤워이나 차봐서 책으로 와서
Now, differently between any two ordinary people in such an ordinary worldly scenario, the meaning of concealment would be a violation of honesty and transparency between two rather than transparency, harmful intent, and concealment would describe concealment in this ordinary scenario. Are there others?
Yeah, someone.
Yeah, so then when you spoke of the elimination of our afflictive emotions or afflictive mental afflictions, allowing us to have victory over our foes, is it because the elimination of our mental afflictions allows us to see the object of our experience that goes differently? Is that how that works? And if not that, why is that?
Oh yeah, this is ani nangi sim radi tulna ra tulna. Then the chigi nuba kyogen chigi rad denzo ani chom rogere sung songa. That then that chigi radi chom bar gyur tsu kande shik yena. Ta ni nangi simgi nyomon denzo chom na ra. Then chigi but susugi 따당 타츠 통수디 gyur rogere 아니 chigi radi gandes chom rogere
냐면 도도도 시에서
You got right to the very heart of it. First, consider how it is that one would never be harmed in the first place by any other if that other didn't have some cause or some reason to do you some harm.
아니 콜랑고스 네바다 균이 네바다 아니 다 대시 망고지기 토네 아니 다 그거 가르치는 네에 심주치고라다 막 심주치네 아니 네바디기 살찌르 네바디기 가르치는 탈 투는 제용도 아니 담아대랑 수치 꼬라실려 그래서
And when one considers what might be the reason behind another ever doing one harm, if one considers it carefully, then one will likely find that either directly or indirectly, one is responsible for having done some harm to them. So when one really looks into the matter, in the end, one will come full circle inevitably.
이 가서 가서 지단 바람도 유스 미 담로나라 편에 조단게 꼴 삼로레스 저랑도 저랑도 그 나기 녀다 나기 자세게 따당게 토네 아니 삼로 담당 지게 되시레스
Our ordinary notions of assistance and harm, which come in under expectations between friends and foes, is in the end where we'll find ourselves again in examination.
나 치기 자기 녀발라나 녀바디 아장기 춘주래 유뉴래 저쪽 전에 튕든지 개발에 뭐 전에 춘주래 아니 장가 전에 유뉴지래스 치기 자기 녀바 제조디 아 니무그랑 녀바 제조디 저쪽 전에 하장 링보 장가 전에 야마수야 뭐 전에 배 하장 야시 뭐 근데 요래서
And when one considers the external adversary and accounts for the harm done to one by them, one will find that whatever they've done, it's comparatively minor. Whatever they've done, it has been of only a short duration. Whatever it is, it's only happened a few times compared to the harm done by afflicted minds in one's own mind, in the sheer number of times one has been harmed by afflicted minds. Those are uncountable. The period, the duration, continuous. And essentially, the harm done by these afflicted minds is vast.
그래서 뭐야 그래서 춘주지 라바이나 기랑이 수부지 멜라렉 제비 동해 대당 수부지 강산 멜라 식베 베티에 니마지 강산 멜라 식베 동해 니부티 아니 동해 치중 가가지고 지어래 이니 알리 삼로 땅아이나 수부 강산 직 내가 치고 매그 치고지 대한 두두 니마지 가나 치고지 디다 아니 두부지 축도 좀 매라 치고 니버디 아니 동해시 좀 남사 여러 와서 알베디로 있습니다.
Imagine touching your finger to a flame for a split second and being burned, and compare that to being burned across one's whole body for a full day, and how very different the pain would be. One's whole body burned, and the burn going on all day long, compared to a moment's burn to the tip of one's finger.
세상다 치기 타기 너버디 까마직 라고라 치베기 너버지마도 요 말했어. 니무 다기 너버디 수부 간다 니마 자마자베 두주 유르부 멜라식바 된데기 동에도 빼도 근데 요 너버치 좀 개발 돼가지고 요래서.
So the difference is just this: the harm done by any external adversary is just as minimal as a small burn to the hand for a split second. But the harm caused by afflicted minds would be comparable to one's entire body being burned, and that burn going on many days.
다들 삼로다는 수수기 니마기 미식나 니메기 나라 세마마기바 룰은나자 이게 삼로 야고 땅 대준세 삼로 땅 용이나 다 되게디 타마 다 니모 너바 임바데 다 그렇다 그래서.
And in the end, if you examine life as you've lived it and daily events as they happen, and what makes for mental distress and physical pain, then if you consider it carefully, then in the end, you do find that afflicted minds, the klesha, are responsible.
동해 축이 야조고 축이 발란나시 동해 찍조 니 양조권의 용투야 되게 되니까 니모고 제와라마도 치기 자기 제와 말해서.
And endless waves of disquiet and pain that follow one after the other are not caused by any single external adversary. They are caused by afflicted minds.
나 말하는 치기 자기 너밖에 해야 되나? 세열에 니뉴에 뒤뒤뒤 된대지 저거 간다 수수고 단도 약보시네 고 너봐 봐 도야 탑시열 유무고 다들라 난 너봐 도 카고를 그 시우지 수수랑게 만도 비행기 겹들 더 로봇이야 탑시지가 요 말. 수수랑게 탑시체나 만도 탑시 토기 말. 제가 유무고 다디 너봐데 비규르고 장가 망보 배자쳐보 띵사보 데레 차대로 제가 자문에디 니모레스 당고를 지기요래서.
Any external foe is limited in the harm they cause. The harm they cause lasts only a short while, and it can be averted, but it is difficult to avert any harm that would come from afflicted minds. There's no extending an olive branch. There's no alliance with afflicted minds. Afflicted minds are responsible for countless pains that are long-lasting and are deep and vast. And so this is to indicate and point clearly to afflicted minds as the foe.
근데 동행 연구에 유모티게야 이모 코랑 싸그리 모두 치료 자기 싸게 말해서. 이모 동행 연구에 유모 저와. 이모티야 코랑 이모 코랑 깨그리 모두 지기 치료 자기 이모 깨 주고 말아 동행 연구에 주고 말해서.
And the continual accumulation of afflicted minds that cause pain cannot be instigated actually by any external foe either. They come as a matter of course internally, each afflicted mind begetting other afflicted minds.
실로도 주어도는 딱과 그두이는 자신 되게 말이야. 자차 녀자 자차 녀자 주어도 되거와 이모디 녀자 두주여 말고 그두이는 자 이임바마도 이모 오버체는 이모를 라고 펜트야 두주 그두여 말해서.
And that external foe as well is not always perpetually only a foe. They will become friend again, and then again foe and friend again, then the situation will always be changing. However, never will the situation change that fundamentally afflicted minds are always a foe and never in alliance with you. And then is there another? If there are no more questions, then we can conclude here and recite our closing prayer.
Oh, yeah, 이런 거 말시에다 이모 남샤시와 이모 남샤도 간가 7월 파 삼로당 단경을 수수고 셈다 이모 니부디 제인데요 제가 수수로 또 수수고 셈기 저바 가르치기도 하면서 수수 딱지 제 아니 도와주기도 해 아니 군세기도 해 아니 차바지기도 해 쓰고지기도 제바지기도나 뭐 그런 거 원래 지기 들으시는 아니 봐 세고래서 근데 세투가 제고래 손으로서
So then, what more is there to say about such a presentation, an indication of what makes afflicted minds what they are? What do we say but that they aren't some external environment, they are one's own mind. They are all mixed up in one's mind. And so one would examine to see where there is rage, resentment, concealment, and examining one's own mind, find these, identify them, discover just how problematic they are so that they might finally be entirely removed.
유모대도 타고 맞게 권하는 맞게 한번에 맞게 탑시 제듯이 다 개심을 탑시 유모 깨산다 그 눈에 깨 남산으로 고추도 그래 그다음 타고 유모 맞게 와서 아니 그래서 유모 깨서나 유모대 봐 숙처를 만들어 전다서 바까 아니 그 숙처로 다 매버터 탑시 맞이나 아니 그 유모대 직지 니지 장가도 막서 장가 마음으로 또 친구 차기 것이라요 또 친구 차나 아니 아주 맞주면도 동네도 깨 잡나야 그냥요 말랑 수술요 말했어 그래서 그 이모 당원에 맞게 봐서 깨 차도나 고바 까는 통단도 홀라 뭔가真的도 오늘도 신 탑시로 신의 까투가 최고라 뒤냐면 레서 없어
To prevent any afflicted mind from ever arising is the priority. To attempt to prevent any afflicted mind from ever arising is the priority. Then, though, when one does arise, with its arising, the beginning of pain is already well begun for you. And so then one would first prevent any afflicted mind from ever arising. But the moment, should one arise, the moment that it does arise, then it would be confronted immediately and its effects reduced immediately. If one does not immediately and forcefully confront an afflicted mind, a mental affliction, then it multiplies and continues to multiply and gains force and becomes increasingly dangerous. And then when one later says, oh, I am so unhappy, it is also unpleasant, one has very little one can do any longer. So then immediately to forcefully confront any afflicted mind, that itself is the very practice.
어이, 니모 왕제 전에 니모 그 장랑 쇼스는 그 동네 아수마도 차이니까 여러 소스.
Once once one forfeits one's own authority and forfeits it completely to mental afflictions, then why wouldn't it happen that life would become unbearable?
어이, 내가 좀 좋지.
Now let us conclude with our closing prayers.
Rendo bele zoye kadar yang kashi sabade lone mari je don jowa ye nande gewe wangbo da gyuchi Dema sumbe tsera kundu yang jambe yang ji tsewe je zone Tembe rinpa kuzan lam ji jo Nyene rupe kena nyen je jo Rangi chi shin tobe lam ji ne Shudra tsewe trawe tab ge Ruwe yi ge mba se je ne Gewe tenpa yuri zen yu chi Tenpa rinjen choge ma kya bam Kya kya nyambar girwe chole ne Ninje chenpo yira kyewa ye Pende teje sewar chebo sho Seje kyawe mechon chele le Lejo chanju lamje rembe kya Tade namje yila pede shen Kyawe zeba rindu kyangyo chi Lamsan rube tuje tuje jing Kegen seje medam me me gun Tsera kundu gyawe ngaba yi Namda lamda trewar magyur chik Kanze tekba chola chuchu chu Tsujin rula zumba de se Tuden dange dadu chochi chik Rashi gyatsu chugun gyaguru chik
From my two collections, vast the space that I have amassed, from working with effort at the practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be helped in your loving compassion for all my lives, my future. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I offer this treasure of happiness to it all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent path never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Dāki shīnyi sāpe kyewa dī, tendān rāwa guna kāmbe. Kyevar jīsū lōsān rāpa yī, tenpe nīpo rīndu sēche shō. Kāre rāve korve shīngam de, pendān dewa māli shōme. Chere sewan tenzi gyatso yī, shabe sīde bhato tengyur jī. Dambe pawo jidara kemba dang kundu sambo deyang deyende. Tenda kunji jesu dalu je gyawa tenda tamje rabdu ngo. Tusum shebe gyawa tamje gi ngowa kangla chodo nga bade. Dagi gewe tsawa digun gyang zambo chuje rabdu ngo warje. Chanchu sencho rinpo je ma je pa na je gyuru je Kewa nyamba meba yang kone kondu pewa sho.
I dedicate whatever virtues I've ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Shinra Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the very Manjushri and Samantapatra realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the victorious thus gone ones of the three times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Thank you, all of you, and good night to you all.